Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Moneyline MMA. Coming back at you guys after a strong week of fights and picks and bets. Bringing you guys our winning picks and bets for the last pay-per-view event of 2023, coming at least from the UFC's perspective. This is UFC 296. Also, I believe the last card in Vegas this year. At least I believe they mentioned that last Saturday on the card. Before we get too deeply into UFC 296 discussions, let's quickly recap. Last Saturday, Jose and I had some really strong 5 and 4 weight picks. My 5-weight Khalil Roundtree absolutely got the job done. Anthony Smith looked old and out of shape and just not ready for the strength that Khalil Roundtree brought. And the countering of Khalil Roundtree was impressive. He just let Anthony Smith push forward, and then he countered everything. And he swung with conviction. You could kind of tell right away that fight was leaning in Khalil Rountree's favor. And then for the main event, Yadong Song, Jose and I both had a heavyweight on that as well, and got the job done against Chris Gutierrez. So that being said, we had a pretty strong week with our higher weights. One fight had to be rescheduled under a new. It was Alan Nascimento had to back out, so Tim Means replaced him. Ended up beating Sumo Duerji anyways. Jose got his one weight with Nasrat, and then otherwise, Andre Muniz came in and kind of embarrassed Jun Young Park, who is the main pick that we lost from last Saturday. So moving forward to UFC 296, let's keep this heat going. Both in Jose and I's best locks of the week have been on fire lately, and let's continue that going forward. So just so all of our listeners can be updated really quick, we make our picks here in a 5-weight system, with the 5-weight being the heaviest, most confident pick, and the 1-weight being the least confident pick. We bring our most confident and most highest weighted pick first, and we go down from there in succession for only the main fights on this card. So yeah, go ahead and skip ahead to our other picks if you'd like, but we're going to bring you our strongest heat first, starting with my 5-weight of Saturday afternoon. We're going to be bringing us to the second fight on the main card. This is a fight near and dear to many people's hearts, especially those who have been around the UFC for a while. It's a lightweight bout between Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett. I don't really need to sit here and go on and on about who Tony Ferguson is. I think anyone listening to this show already knows what to expect out of Tony Ferguson. Unfortunately, the man's not want to fight in quite some time, right? He's fighting at the top end of the lightweight division, but just can't get it done. And that kind of leads into why my 5-weight pick here is Paddy Pimblett. And I have to say it regretfully, because I was telling Jose before the show, man, I'm rooting for Tony Ferguson. I love the guy. I have nothing against him. I want him to win this fight, just for the United States, right? And just to shut up Paddy and all of his crazy fans, right? But I can't give you guys a pick I don't think is going to win. I can't just make a pick for a guy based on my heart. I think Tony Ferguson's made some interesting strides in training. It's been this whole thing to train with David Goggins, and he's throwing up and blah, blah, blah. But to be honest, man, I agree with Paddy in the one interview he had where Paddy's like, look, Tony's toughness and Tony's conditioning was never in question. You can look at all of Tony's past fights, and that's one thing that Tony has never lost. He is always ready to go. He's never tired. He's always going to be in your face. You're never going to tire him out, right? He's not going to give up. You can have him in an armbar with his bones ready to snap, and he will not give up, right? That's never something that Tony has allowed to go away. But Tony has definitely strayed from the technical aspect of what he used to be best at, and I think it's really shown by a lot of his recent opponents. I mean, even most recently against Bobby Green. Look, Bobby Green is a great fighter, and I had him winning his last fight against late replacement Jalen Turner, and he didn't get the job done. So I'm really not trying to knock Bobby Green here, but getting submitted by Bobby Green was a significant part, if you ask me. That's one thing that Tony was always great at, right, is being able to wrestle but not get submitted. And that changed against Bobby Green. he got himself in an arm triangle choke and was unconscious, right? Because he doesn't give up. It's not Tony to tap. So he goes completely unconscious in the ring. And I'm just look, I'm not saying that the exact same thing is going to happen here against Patty, but I think it's a way higher possibility that Patty chokes out Tony just like he's choked out some of his previous opponents, Jordan Levitt, Rodrigo Vargas. Some of these dudes aren't the top end of the lightweight division, but neither is Tony right now. We'd be lying if we said he was. So, I mean, even as ranks go, I'm not even sure he's in the top 15 anymore. So who is this guy? So for all that being said, without rambling, I'm curious to see what Jose's got on this. But my last point is Patty being a minus 390 favorite is very significant. That's a lot of money to put down on a guy like Patty who arguably wasn't doing so well against Jared Gordon. I don't know, man. It's been a long time since he's fought. He's coming back off injury, and we all know that he likes to balloon up in weight and then do a really grueling weight cut and training camp going into his fights. But in the end, Patty seems to have it down to a T, and I can't knock it if it's worked for him up until now. So I'm taking Patty as my 5-weight pick, reluctantly, but to me, he's the best pick to make on this card. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, so I agree with you. This is definitely like a sad downfall for Tony Ferguson in his career. You know, a guy that he's been at the top, and then just every loss he's taken, it's a lot of them just been pretty brutal losses, to be honest. Even and it's just starting with that Justin Gaethje fight. But even then, all those fights that he's lost, majority of them he's shown some good things. Even that Justin Gaethje fight, he showed that he was still in the fight, and he was still a threat at times. But even though at the end ultimately had to be called in the fifth round, but then since then he hasn't been the same. And the Michael Chandler fight, I did, you know, he was winning that fight up until that just brutal second round knockout. But that first round definitely would give it to Tony Ferguson. The Nate Diaz fight, that was a last minute replacement fight, and he got guillotine, which arguably that's what Nate Diaz was training for to catch Shemaev in. So I wouldn't blame that. You know, those I don't really look down upon. The Bobby Green fight though, that's the one. That's when you finally start seeing like, okay, maybe his career is declining that much, and now he's getting submitted by Bobby Green. And to be fair, that did happen right at the end, just before the bell rung. So Tony Ferguson was just that close to just going to a unanimous decision loss. And so so some of his fights that he's lost have just been completely brutal and just like almost like undeserving and could have been avoided, just but minor mistakes. And I think that's just been catching up with him because of his age and just the amount of punishment he's taken over the years. And but in this one, I'm gonna give it. I'm going with Tony Ferguson. I'm gonna go with him as my 2-weight. I am not, he's my 2-weight because I'm not that confident. But in this matchup, I am a little confident that he should beat Paddy Pimblett, because Paddy, this is going to be the biggest test of Paddy's career for sure. He's going against a legend. He's going to a guy that was the former interim champ. He's not going against someone that he's outweighing like Jared Gordon. And Jordan Leavitt, for example, too. He just lost to Chase Hooper, and so Jordan Leavitt isn't. I'm not really too concerned about those wins. Like, they're not too impressive. All his wins thus far in the UFC haven't really impressed me at all, to be honest. And Paddy Pimblett, he's a little reckless with his striking. Tony Ferguson's very creative with his. I think Paddy, he leaves his chin out wide open and he drops his fists a lot. That's a perfect opportunity for Tony to start doing what he does best and throwing his elbows and start slicing Paddy. And apparently Tony's been changing up his workout routine as of lately, and so I don't know. Like, he's been doing a lot of conditioning, so I'm wondering. So he's probably going to try to do a similar Kobe Covington strategy and probably just use his cardio and pace as a weapon, which I think against Paddy would be efficient, tire Paddy out, and ultimately beat him via unanimous decision. Is the way I see Tony getting him. Would it be a submission? Possibly. Paddy's only lost once via submission. I don't know if I see Paddy putting Tony out, even though again I have said Tony has been put out pretty brutally lately. If Paddy does knock out Tony or submit him, then yeah, Tony needs to retire for sure. Then that's 100% done for his UFC career. But in this one, I am going with the older 39-year-old Tony Ferguson. He does have a reach advantage as well, a 3.5 reach advantage. And when it comes to striking, he does still throw more significant strikes per minute than Paddy Pimblett. He does absorb more per minute, but he's also been in the UFC a lot longer than Patty. And when it comes to the striking too, I mean with the grappling, I think Tony Ferguson, he has not looked as great as of lately on the floor, but I do think that he should fare well enough to survive any ground and pound submission attempts that Patty will throw. I think one is going to be just a Tony Ferguson pulling out a vet win via unanimous decision against a young guy like Patty. For this one, I'm going with Tony Ferguson. He is a plus 270 underdog, unless it changed right here. He is a plus 240 underdog on FanDuel. So yeah, this one I'm going with the underdog, Tony Ferguson, the old guy. If he loses, definitely needs to retire. And obviously, safe to say I'll never go with him again. But for this time, I am going with Tony Ferguson as my two-weight.
I like your assessment, and I like your willingness to take the dog here. I was struggling ahead of the show here to find my spots on this card because I do feel like it's a favorite heavy card. It's hard to find good underdog situations, and I really like Tony Ferguson. I just I can't endorse what I've seen as of late, and I can't agree with your assertion that he won't get submitted. I think if Patty gets on his back, Tony's absolutely done for. I might not say that about Tony a couple of years ago, but I'm just in my mind, I'm converting myself to a different Tony. Right, we're talking about a Tony Ferguson who's DUI away from being cut from the UFC, in my opinion. I mean, he just can't. He can't even get his he can't even go to the bar and get an Uber home at this point, and he's getting arrested. It's just a mess, in my opinion. So, Tony Ferguson, I like the strides he's taken, but I just don't think he's doing it the right way. If he was doing it the right way, if you ask me, he needs to bring in an MMA coach that is going to do MMA style training. Conditioning was never his concern. I said that in my first part of my handicap. I like that he's switching up his routine because what he's been doing hasn't worked, but conditioning was never the issue. Tony needs to get better at his boxing, and he needs to find his spots because you're exactly correct. The way to beating Patty for him here is using Patty's what's the word I'm looking for? Patty's like his propensity might be the word I'm looking for. His tendency to leave his chin up, especially if he's feeling like he's got a lot of momentum and Patty's just kind of swinging away. He'll leave his chin up, and Tony could absolutely clobber it and get himself a knockdown and jump on Patty's back and have a completely different fight. But if that's not the case, I just think Patty's going to dominate the fight. So in that case, that's why he's the pick here. And yeah, it's going to be sad to see if I am correct, but I do think Tony is on his path to retirement here, sadly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think even win or lose, Tony should just call it quits because I don't think it's going to be hard for him to rack up another win in the top 10, and I don't see him becoming a champ anymore anytime soon. So yeah, if, win or lose, I think this would be his last one.
That's not, yeah,
39
honestly.
years old, like yeah, not much he can do really with his UFC career now. I'd say this would be the best win he can get. I think
Oh
at this
yeah.
point, anyone else is going to be tougher. If any other name value he gets is going to be tougher. Probably the one that probably he could have probably had was Nate Diaz, but that's already long gone. Nate Diaz is not the UFC, so this one's I think the ship is pretty much sailed for Tony Ferguson. I'd say.
He would need like a Benny Dariush kind of thing because Dariush has been knocked out a few times in a row now. He would need a guy on the way down. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, even then, yeah, baby. Even then, I think I still take Benil over Tony. So
Probably, yeah.
yeah,
So,
but
but yeah,
yeah, this one we'll definitely have to disagree on this one. You have Patty as your five-weight, and yeah, I'm rocking Tony as my two-weight. I'm not that confident in him, but I still have a little faith in the old dog.
sounds good.
So then I guess that's safe to move on to my five-weight, and
Yep.
this is the welterweight bout between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Shavkat Rakhmonov. Right now, Shavkat is a big favorite at minus 670, while Stephen Thompson is the betting underdog at plus 430. This one, safe to say I'm going with the big favorite, Shavkat. He is my five weight. He's looked impressive in all of his UFC fights. Even the Jeff Dillon, it did not look the cleanest. Like I think he would definitely put up a really good fight. Like him and Kamaru Usman or something would be a really fun fight, I think, because of his striking. I think if his striking has gotten better, then yeah, I think he's going to be able to hang perfectly fine with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think Shavkat can even sneak in a submission on Steven, and Steven's never been submitted before, but I think Shavkat, I think he may be able to sink something in. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's still hanging up there. He's 40 years old, but moving like he's still in his early 30s. Dude is athletic as hell, and he's come up short unanimously. So a couple of times to Bilal and Gilbert Burns, and so if Shavkat does not finish Stephen Wonderboy Thompson via submission or at least ground and pound, then yeah, I think he's gonna beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson unanimously, and it's just gonna be out grapple and just control time for Shavkat over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So I'm definitely leaning heavy towards this favorite. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Man, this was a tough one for me. I was looking at this one as like maybe a good spot to get the underdog. I got a lot of respect for Stephen Thompson. Plus 430 is huge money for such a good UFC veteran. But kind of along the same lines here is my 5-weight pick. I can't give you guys a pick I don't think is going to win. I do have Shavkat here. He's my 1-weight. Believe it or not, I do have him as my least confident pick. And for a few things, I think Stephen Thompson is going to surprise some people on Saturday. I don't have him winning this fight, but I have this fight being very, very close. I personally would bet my strongest bet overall on this fight. I would actually say I would tend to lean over 2.5 rounds. It's crazy. Oh my God. Shavkat Rakhmonov finishes everybody. It's crazy. He never gets in the 4th or 5th round. I can't believe it. It's Shavkat's the next amazing. He's the best fighter that's ever faced anybody in the UFC. But all trends have to stop at some point. And when you get to this, this level of the UFC, right? He's fought Neil Magny and Jeff Neal. Those are great fighters. Stephen Thompson is the real deal. He has fought for a belt. Sadly for him, he didn't win the belt. But Stephen Thompson is by far the strongest competition Shavkat will have ever faced on Saturday night. I think Stephen Thompson's striking is going to very clearly rival Shavkat's striking. I think the big difference here, of course, is on the ground. Shavkat's got multiple submission wins, a standing rear naked choke, or whatever else he wants to do. As I said, he finishes most of his fights, right? Stephen Thompson's never been submitted. I don't really anticipate that to be... Now, I could see the arguments, right? Shavkat is one of a kind. He's going to be the one that does it. I just don't see that happening. Stephen Thompson has been there and done that with some of the best in this division for years and years. 2017 onwards, he has fought the best this division had. You think of anybody that's good in this division, Stephen Thompson's likely fought him. You know what I'm saying? So I got to give him a lot of respect. The fact that he takes this fight alone, he says no to fighting an overweight. Who was it? His last fight, someone was overweight. It was Michel Pereira, I think. It was overweight, and he was like, "Nope, I'm not gonna fight you. I'm gonna take my check and go home." Right? That to me speaks volumes. Stephen Thompson is laser focused on the goal, and to say no to that fight, knowing that he's in a bad spot, when most fighters will take the paycheck, they'll take the extra chance to win, or get the winning paycheck and get the double pay or whatever. He said, no, I want to make sure that I have the time to prepare for the opponent I'm expecting to fight at the weight I'm expecting to fight him. I think that speaks volumes for Stephen Thompson's confidence. I think his mentality is exactly where it needs to be going into this fight, and he knows what he signed up for. I highly doubt he signed on the dotted line to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov in a bout in a cage, not realizing that this guy's finished every single opponent he's fought in his professional career. Right? I fully expect Stephen Thompson to see this coming, to stop takedown attempts. He's got a 64% career takedown defense, and I think he's going to be able to utilize that well enough to stop Shavkat's takedown attempts. Whether there's a knockdown or not could be a completely different story, but I really see this being a boxing match, and I really see Stephen Thompson surprising some people on Saturday. So I do have Shavkat with my 1-weight. Very tentatively saying that he'll win that fight. But to me, the strongest underdog on this card of UFC 296, at least the main card, is Stephen Thompson here.
No, I hear you. He is a strong underdog, and normally I would lead with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Like when he went against Kevin Holland a year ago already. I'm pretty sure. I think I had Stephen Wonderboy for that, and he does such a great job managing his range and distance with his striking and his feet, especially. And so he has a pretty strong long reach, but in this one, Shavkat has a 2-inch reach advantage over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and he's slightly a bit taller too. So I'm really interested to see how this striking match will play out. Both guys throw a high volume of punches, and in this case, I think it's just without a doubt Shavkat is going to try to close the distance and just try to out-grapple Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and not let him do what he does best, which is rack up points via striking. So if Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can prevent any takedowns or any pushing against the cage and not allow Shavkat to have a lot of control time and try to stay in the center, then I think it's going to be a really fun striking match between the two. But for this one, I feel just too strong on Shavkat. I think once he gets his hands on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's just not going to let Stephen get to work. So for this one, yeah, it's gonna be one where I'm gonna go with and do Shavkat as my 5-weight, and he is your 1-weight. But yeah, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, definitely a still a threat even at the age of 40.
Yeah. And one last point I'd like to make for this is Stephen Thompson just knocked out Kevin Holland, who's like 6'3", 81-inch reach. So to me, more along the lines of, okay, this guy's bigger than that guy. I think Steven is going to be able to manage Shavkat's size just fine. What I'm wondering about is the strength. I think it's very obvious that Shavkat and Kevin Holland have different levels of strength associated to them. And Kevin Holland did land a couple of takedowns in their fight. He landed 2 of 6 takedowns. It totaled for 1 minute, 21 seconds of control time. And that fight ended in the 4th round. So it did go over 15 minutes. And there is that interesting aspect of Kevin Holland having a little bit, 33% wrestling success against Stephen Thompson. But it also makes me wonder, like, what is the likelihood of Stephen Thompson doing a training camp of preparing for stuff like that? Because, I mean, how do you go to a training camp against Shavkat Rakhmonov right now and not hammer away on your grappling and your wrestling drills? I just don't understand, because that's the main thing I would be focusing on if I was Stephen Thompson. I've got my chops in the boxing game. I'll do some sparring here or there, but I really need to tune in and hone into that wrestling aspect of the game. Because, yeah, if you're right about Shavkat getting his hands on Thompson and he is as strong as he seems, either the fight's ending in that round or at the very least, Shavkat's going to get the round win on Steven's back the whole time.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how this one plays. I definitely think, I honestly, I can see either unanimous decision win for Shavkat or even a submission again. Not to reiterate, but Steven's never been submitted before, but never say never, I guess. But,
yeah,
this one, we both agree he is my 5-weight. Shavkat is my 5-weight, and he is your 1-weight. So that leaves us next to your 4-weight.
Yeah, never say never is exactly correct, because that's why I'm saying look at the over 2.5 in that round. It might be 3.5. No, it can't be. That's a 3-round fight. I was stuck on the fact that they were in a main event in the last fight. So regardless, over 2.5, I actually like that there, as crazy as it sounds. Moving on to my 4-weight pick, we're going to go to the co-main event. We're going to start discussing some of the heaters on this card. Not to say that the other fights aren't heaters, but this one's a banger. This is a rematch here for the belt, the flyweight belt. Alexander Pantoja, the man that I chose as the underdog to claim the belt against Brandon Moreno in their rematch, is now in his first title defense against Brandon Royval, which, just so funny enough, ends up being a rematch in and of itself from a couple of years ago. I believe, yes, it was August 21 of 2021 when Alexander Pantoja took down and submitted Brandon Royval in the 2nd round via rear naked choke. Honestly, without rambling on, I expect a lot more of the same from that fight in this fight. I don't personally think many of these fighters have changed. I think Royval, after taking that loss, he gets a split decision wins against Rogerio Bontorin. He gets taken down 8 times in that fight, still gets the nod after being controlled for over half of the fight in control time, still gets the split decision nod. I just don't know how much he should have even gotten that win. I'm very skeptical. I think Royval is very much so finish the fight early or he's getting beat kind of fighter. His last 2 wins after getting that split, that very questionable, in my opinion, split decision win, he gets 2 first round finishes, one by sub and one by a flying knee. Or at least just a knee in general. I don't know if it was flying necessarily, but they weren't against top echelon fighters either. I don't mean to take away from Mateus Nicolau. He was on a great streak, but look, man, I'm. We're talking about Alexander Pantoja, the guy who just dethroned Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno would have been a favorite to beat any of these. I almost just. Brandon Moreno would have been a favorite to beat Brandon Royval. Even bigger is my argument that I'm trying to make. If Brandon Moreno beat Pantoja and this fight was happening between the two, Brandon Moreno would be like minus 300. It wouldn't even be close. Blah, 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 blah. Pantoja's sitting up minus 192. I don't see why. I think Pantoja's very superior wrestling is going to be obvious in this fight. He's going to take down Brandon Royval at will. Brandon Royval's takedown defense is 39%. It's just not going to suffice. He's going to get taken down. He's going to get strangled. Give me Pantoja by submission.
Yeah, Nick, for this one, I agree with you. I myself also have Alexander Pantoja, and he is also my 4-weight. And you said it best. I think this division is just gonna have a lot of the similar dudes fighting each other and rematching each other. It seems like they're all so good, and I think either one of them can defeat each other any given day. You throw Kyle France in there, Davison Figueroa before he moved up, and obviously you mentioned Brandon Moreno. All these guys have wins over each other, and it's crazy. And I think this one he can get that rematch win against Alexander Pantoja and become champ now. It's very doable. He has looked good, but Alexander Pantoja does look like he's next level. And even then, I think this is a fight Alexander Pantoja can definitely win. But I want to see Alexander Pantoja and like Brandon Moreno again. I think that's another fight. If he beats Brandon Moreno, then I think Pantoja is probably going to be here for a while as champion. But he's just a guy that I think should be able to beat Royval, and then after that I want to see him go against Brandon Moreno again. I think that fight would probably make more sense. But in overall, when it comes down to statistics as well, Pantoja outdoes Royval. When it comes to significant strikes per minute, Alexander Pantoja lands 4.41, while Brandon Royval lands 3.45. And in the grappling department, you can expect Alexander Pantoja most likely to want to go for the takedown, but Royval, he's pretty good when it comes to the grappling department, and he's going to be looking for submissions regardless. So in this one, I'm going to go with Pantoja. He's my 4-weight, and I expect him pretty much just to dominate in any way he wants. Royval is a legit threat. I do think he's legit, but in this one, I'm just feeling a lot more confident with Pantoja. So I'll agree with you on this one, Nick. He's my 4-weight.
Sounds good. Yeah, not much more to say than that. I agree. Royval's definitely a threat. If Pantoja can survive that early onslaught, I'm sitting pretty with the money that I have bet on Pantoja. I'm confident in that. I'd like him to win by submission or points. That might actually be one of the bets I make on Saturday, because there is possibility of a KO, of course, but I just don't think it's all that likely. I would expect a decision or a submission win there. And yeah, that being said, Alexander Pantoja getting the belt back, and I think you're right. He might be at that throne for a while. They're going to have to do there's no doubt in my mind. I'd be willing to do a wager with anyone who hears this that Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja 3 is in 2024 for the belt again. They'll do it.
Sense. Yeah, I like it.
They'll do that all day long. Yeah. Brandon Moreno just has to win another fight, like similar to Max Holloway in the featherweight division or whatever. He just has to win one more fight, and then he'll go ahead and fight Volkanovski again. Why not?
Yeah, I see it.
So that said, let's move on to that was both of our 5 and 4 weights. Let's move on to your 3-weight.
So for my 3-weight, this is the welterweight match between Vicente Luque and Ian Gary. right now, Ian Gary is the betting favorite at minus 430, while Vicente Luque is the betting underdog at plus 300. For this one, you know, I'm for my three weight. Yep, I'm going with Ian Gary. He's looked dominant, and to do what he's done against a vet like Neil Magny and win unanimous decision and so confidently, and just knowing he was winning throughout the match, I think just shows that he is going to be a legit threat and is a legit threat in this division. Moving forward with Vicente Luque, then too, he's coming off unanimous decision win over Rafael Dos Anjos. But before that, he's lost twice and even got KO'd by Jeff Neal. I think Ian Gary, just his size, and Vicente does have a slight reach advantage, but overall Ian Gary is the taller, bigger guy here, and I'm expecting him to just come in and be the more athletic guy. When it comes to landing significant strikes per minute, Ian Gary, it lands 6.67, which is ridiculously high. And then Vicente Luque lands 5.17, which is also high. So this is going to be a good striking match. And when it comes to grappling, I almost think it's going to split down to 50-50. Vicente Luque, he has great grappling. 8 out of his 22 wins come via submission. While Ian Gary, he only has one via submission. He only has one win via submission, but I think on the floor, I don't think I think he's gonna if he doesn't grapple much with Vicente Luque, I think he's just gonna have no problem getting Vicente off of him and getting back up and pretty much picking him apart on the feet. I think this fight is probably gonna be another unanimous decision win for Ian Gary. Possible TKO. He did TKO Daniel Rodriguez earlier this year, so possible TKO. But Vicente Luque, he hasn't really been KO'd or TKO'd only once in his career, which was the one that just happened to Jeff Neal. So I think this one, I'm going with Ian Gary. He's my three-way, and I have him at least taking this unanimous decision. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Well, it was interesting to see the storylines for this fight, I guess is the way to put it. A lot going on in Ian Gary's personal life. I do wonder how that affected his preparation for this, and just in general, like spending a week ahead of the fight here, now doing media, being asked about it for a whole entire week straight. Like, if he isn't like very happy with where he's at mentally, those questions will drain, and they will continue to eat away, and they will make him think about what situation he's in, and he'll take attention away from the task at hand, which is to beat Vicente Luque in a fight. I think Ian Gary has great mental fortitude, so in the end, I do have him as my two-weight pick here. I do agree that he should get the job done. The reason he's lower on my weight is because of the word there, should. I think Ian Gary is more talented, specifically in the striking department. You highlighted some of his striking attributes, and they both have a high volume of strikes landed against their opponents. But what stands out to me is that Luque absorbs over 5 strikes per minute, as well as dishing it, while Ian Gary absorbs 3.5. That's a strike and a half less per minute. I think that's somewhat significant. Granted, there could be a little argument being made maybe that Vicente Luque has fought a little harder of competition. He's fought Stephen Thompson, Mike Perry back in the day, Bilal Muhammad, Jeff Neal, and RDA most recently, which kind of leads me to my other point of concern, in that Vicente Luque wrestled RDA, 8 of 11 takedowns, 12 minutes time control. RDA, in my mind, is a pretty good wrestler. He might not be the best wrestler in the UFC. He might not be a historic, good, RDA to me is a tough guy to take down and hold on to for that long. And the fact that Vicente Luque did it, got the unanimous decision win. I get that RDA is a bit old. He's a bit washed up. But I don't know, man. If he's able to take down Ian Gary, I'm not sure Ian Gary's getting back up that round. I'm not saying he finishes Ian Gary. Vicente Luque does not have an impressive amount of submissions. He's got 8 total submission wins under his belt, most recently against Chiesa and Tyron Woodley back in 2021. Those are round 1 submissions, though. Vicente Luque can't be denied that he has the wrestling and submission advantage here. I'm not sure he can utilize it, but I'm just explaining why Ian Gary's my two-weight. He by far should be outstriking Luque. He should piece him up. Ian Gary's been able to piece up all of his previous opponents, guys like D-Rod, who are good strikers. Neil Magny is a really impressive striker. 91 to 27 strikes landed is very impressive in a fight that went the full 15 minutes. So if Luque doesn't factor in those wrestling shots and take his opportunities, I'd say Ian Gary would be pretty much my 5 weight. Like, it's just literally that simple. So my 2 weight is a lot of reservation on that wrestling aspect, but otherwise I do agree. 2 weight for me on Ian Gary.
Yeah, sounds fair enough. And yeah, no, yeah, and then for Ian Gary too. I mean, he does sport a 69% takedown defense. So I do think if he shuts down that takedown, if if he rocks his takedown defense and shuts it down from Vicente Luque, then yeah, Ian Gary will get the job done. I feel for it. You feel for it. He is my 3 weight, and he is your 2 weight. So then that moves on to your 3 weight, Nick.
Yeah, and I do just want to give the caveat too that looking at who Ian Gary's fought in the UFC, at least I can't really speak outside of the UFC. None of these dudes are wrestlers. I personally don't think Ian Gary has been even close to tested on the wrestling aspect, especially at the UFC level. So, not saying that Vicente Luque will give him that test, but just making a note, future fight analysis. Even if Ian Gary gets this win, if they match him up against a top end wrestler, I'm likely fading Ian Gary. It's just, I don't know, man. If it was like a Kamaru Usman type situation, I know he's not in this division anymore, but to me, Kamaru Usman will clean the floor with Ian Gary. At least Kamaru Usman as of last year. Maybe not necessarily right this second. Colby Covington would clean Ian Gary. Wouldn't even be I know he's fighting for the belt. And that's another fight on this card, which is awesome, but he'd just clean him, in my opinion. So Ian Gary definitely needs to consider that the MMA has more than just boxing involved, and I get he has a 69% takedown defense, but I don't think he's been tested. That being said, I will move on to the 3-weight, my 3-weight, which finally brings us to the main event of the afternoon. We took a little time to get to that main event, but here we are. The welterweight belt is on the line. Leon Edwards is finally fighting someone other than Kamaru Usman for said belt. I just say that because it's been since like 2021. So it feels like forever, but it's only been a couple of years. Leon Edwards is just a superior striker. Colby Covington is a superior wrestler. And it's really up to what you think you're going to get. Will Leon Edwards defend takedowns? Will Colby Covington, dominate on the ground? Will Leon be able to hold Colby to the feet and outstrike him? I think a lot of those questions is what you ask yourself when you make a final determination. Just to quickly get to the odds, Leon Edwards is the favorite at -156. Covington, the underdog, at +122. And without rambling any further, I got Leon Edwards here as my 3-weight. Still a somewhat hesitant 3-weight, but in the end, I have more confidence in Leon Edwards winning than I do Ian Gary or Shavkat Rakhmonov. And that's just because I think he's kind of already established his propensity to stick it through, right, with tough wrestlers. Kamaru Usman, one of the best wrestlers, 10 minutes of takedown control time in their first fight when Kamaru Usman gets KO'd in the 5th round. He was dominating via wrestling, gets KO'd. Leon Edwards will not give up, and he showed a very big improvement in my opinion, because the second fight with Kamaru Usman, he lands less takedowns, 4 of 15, and only gets 5 minutes control time. He halved the amount of control time. I think if Leon Edwards is smart, which he is, he's a champion of the UFC for a reason, he knows exactly what Colby Covington wants to do in this fight. Leon Edwards, there's no doubt in my mind, is training a lot of wrestling, and I will rely on the fact that he is consistently getting better at his wrestling defense. And he's just, to me, a very clear superior on the feet. It's interesting looking at their stats, because we can sit here and say, well, Colby Covington lands 2 times more strikes. But, okay, that's significant strikes. And a significant strike is just landed, is defined as a strike landed at distance. I think Leon Edwards has a lot more power. So even if he's not going to land as many volume strikes, I think he's going to shock Colby Covington's brain with some really tough kicks, some tough strikes. Colby Covington, has too much time out of the ring. Simple as that. Even if he's been sparring and this and that, I really think that the ring rust aspect is real for him too. He's got 2 KO wins on his belt. 2. He's not going to KO Leon Edwards. He's got 2 under his entire professional belt. So what are Colby Covington's options to win here? He submits Leon Edwards, or he knocks him out, or he gets the decision win. Of those 3 options, we know it's not going to be a KO. Maybe he gets the submission, but Leon Edwards has never been submitted. And he's fought Kamaru Usman twice. If someone was going to do it, would it not have been Kamaru Usman? Would it not have been Nate Diaz? Would it not have been Rafael Dos Anjos? Would it not have been Gunnar Nelson? These are all dudes who will choke your ass. My apologies for the profanity, but that being said, I'm very confident. I'm almost talking myself into becoming more confident here in Leon Edwards as I go, just because I really only see 1, maybe 2 paths to victory for Colby. Love Colby as a fighter, got nothing against him, but in the end, I think he loses this fight.
Yeah, so for this one, this is, if you're wondering if Tony Ferguson was my 2-weight, who would be my 1-weight? And that is definitely Colby Covington. He is my 1-weight. And there's a lot of things, you mentioned that, he's not been really that active lately, but he's almost been just as active as Leon Edwards. Since 2019, both guys have fought 3 times. And I'm saying 3 times for Leon Edwards because that Bilal Muhammad fight, it pretty much got canceled. We didn't really see much. Like Leon didn't see much, that ended right away in the 2nd round. So pretty much essentially both guys did fight only 3 times. And I would say the one thing that Leon does have over Colby Covington, besides being the champion, is the 2 wins over Kamaru Usman. One of those, he was on his way to a loss, though. But, yeah, he obviously came back and did that head kick. And those are, those fights against Kamaru Usman is really what is pretty much why Colby is my 1-weight. And I see him being the underdog, obviously. Just being finished and unanimously losing to Kamaru Usman is, which is a guy that Leon beat twice, is definitely, a reason why makes sense to go with Leon. But the thing is, it's the style that Leon's going to bring towards Colby is going to be a little different than what Kamaru did. The first fight, they respected each other's wrestling a lot. In this one, I expect Colby to be the better wrestler and do pretty much what Kamaru did to Leon the first time in. If he learns from his mistakes, won't get finished. But again, he is my 1-weight because Leon can finish Colby in a similar fashion with a head kick as well. But when it comes to landing significant strikes per minute, Colby Covington has a high pace. He throws a high volume of punches. He lands 4.1 significant strikes per minute, while Leon lands 2.8. And both guys don't really absorb as much. Colby Covington absorbs 3.05, while Leon 2.4. And when it comes to takedown average, I would give this obviously to Colby Covington all day. He lands about, on average, four takedowns per fight, per 3-round fight. And so that being said, I think this one is just going to be Colby doing what he does best and press forward, throw a high volume of punches, get him against the cage and take him down and just keep grounding and pounding. Leon Edwards, again, Colby is my 1-weight. Leon can definitely shut Colby down and just pretty much beat him the same way he's beating Kamaru Usman. Because really, that is the game plan. Colby Covington is essentially just another version of Kamaru Usman, just a strong wrestler with great striking. And just, can you beat him? Can you not get taken down? Can you get back up right away? And can you outstrike him? And Leon Edwards can outstrike Colby Covington, especially being a little bit taller and having a 2-inch reach advantage over him. Colby throws a high volume and he compensates the distance always by his wrestling as well. So he's going to come in and just, again, take him down and ground and pound him. And I think this one is going to be a unanimous decision win for Colby Covington. I don't know if he'll TKO Leon. It'd be crazy if he does, but I think it'd probably be a unanimous decision win for Colby. But again, he is my 1-weight. Leon could definitely just also win via unanimous decision or TKO / KO him. So that's why Colby Covington is my 1-weight for this one. I do have some faith in him because even though he has been out for a while, he's definitely been training and he's still a legitimate threat. And it's really a now or never for him. He's 35 years old and he's going to turn 36 in a couple of months. So yeah, I think he's still got it, and he's going to be a high pressure fighter, and it's going to be a good, fun, close one. And that's why he's my one weight.
So yeah, it sounds like we kind of agree. I just agree on some of the aspects of the fight. I just don't agree that Colby Covington's gonna be able to impose his will. It's just to me too obvious to see what his game plan will be. And if Leon doesn't come into this fight knowing that, I don't even understand how he became champion in the first place. It's just that's what the UFC is all about. You got to know who you're fighting and what their goals are against you. I think Leon Edwards and his team are very good at that. And if Colby's able to come in here off a year and a half, a year, almost 2 years, a layoff, and do that to a current champion who's done what he has to Kamaru Usman, I'm far more impressed than I will be for anyone else on the card Saturday night. Very happy for Colby if he's able to get that done, but personally, I got pretty low odds, pretty low faith, I should say, in that happening. So, but yeah, that was exciting to talk about these fights. I think a lot of them are good matchmaking situations. Like, I have a note on my sheet here that I feel like with the Tony fight with Paddy Pimblett, that it's a good matchmaking fight. But I think what the UFC is really trying to go for is Paddy beats Tony, so that you get a lot of the old heads that are Tony fans that they can kind of convert over to being Paddy fans. You want to see Paddy go in there and do all this and that and do his whole shebang with the walkout and then getting the mic to get his after fight interview and call somebody out and do this whole thing, right? It's the UFC's plan, in my opinion, for the Tony Ferguson fans, at least a good percentage of them, to migrate over to the Paddy Pimblett side after he gets his ass finished on Saturday night. And I'm sad to say, but I think that's the true case of what's going to happen. Outside of the main card too, man, we got title challenger Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell on the prelims. It's ridiculous. Former title belt holder, I believe, Cody Garbrandt fighting Brian Kelleher. Now Cody Garbrandt's coming off all that injury BS. Alonzo Menafield versus Dustin Jacoby. I mean, wow. There's some nuts. Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov is the first fight on this card. That is the fight that the UFC has said, that's probably the most boring one. Randy Brown? I mean, geez. I get he had a tough, he's kind of had a tough year because he lost to Jack Della Maddalena, but geez. Those are some talented dudes to be opening this card. Very excited for Saturday night, and I know Jose is just as excited, if not more excited than I am. So we are happy to get you guys our picks this Monday night. Give you guys a couple of days to simmer on it. Let us know in the comments down below who you agree with in those fights that Jose and I disagreed on. Namely, well, we actually agreed on most of these fights, if not all of them, besides Tony Ferguson. I did have Paddy Pimblett as my highest weight. But to be honest, my one weight, I'm very tempted to switch that over to Stephen Thompson, excuse me. But in any case, that will be our picks, and our lock of the week, of course, is going to be a tough one, but it would have to be Pantoja. 8 total confidence points for Pantoja between Jose and I. Let's ride with Alexander Pantoja within the distance on Saturday night. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will be back the next time the UFC has fights. I should honestly double-check because we're getting close to the end. So after this card, we're finished. We're finished for the year, Jose. This is the last analysis of 2023 for Moneyline MMA. There will not be another MMA card from the UFC, at least, until January 13th, when Ankalaev fights Johnny Walker. Ankalaev currently a huge favorite in that fight. But until then, Moneyline MMA will be signing off. Thanks again for listening, and we had a great 2023. Let's start off with a great 2024 in that fight night card on January 13th. But otherwise, before then, let's enjoy Saturday night and our last pay-per-view card of the year. Thanks for listening.